Good evening, everyone. We're truly glad to have you back with us tonight. Hospitals are meant to heal, to save lives, but what if some of them hide something far more sinister? Tonight's stories will make you think twice before ever walking down a quiet hospital corridor again. And hey, if you'd like us to create even longer videos with more terrifying tales, let us know in the comments. We're listening. Remember, you're watching Sleep Horror Stories. I want to share an experience that wasn't just traumatic and heartbreaking. It was horrifying and nightmarish. It happened in a hospital. Ever since that night, I've avoided medical centers unless it's absolutely necessary. I never imagined what I witnessed could be real. I spent months denying it, convincing myself it hadn't happened. It was back in 2001. I had just graduated with my degree in psychology. The celebration was unforgettable, captured in photos and videos, one of the happiest days of my life. But soon after, my younger brother was admitted to Kings County Hospital Center in Brooklyn. He had been battling a chronic illness for years. That boy was my world. So when they said someone had to stay with him overnight, I volunteered without hesitation. I didn't care how long it would be. His treatment was going to take weeks, and they said the medication needed to be increased. He looked okay, though. He smiled, joked with me, even laughed at my terrible humor just to make me feel better. I brought my laptop so we could watch movies at night and help him sleep when boredom kicked in. Eventually, he'd doze off, and I'd be left wide awake. One night, I stepped out into the hallway near the nurse's station where a few were working on their computers. I started talking to one of them. She was alone at the end. She asked about my job, and I told her I had just graduated in psychology. We chatted for a while until the topic shifted. She brought up the room next to my brother's. She said a little boy had died there just a month ago, completely unexpectedly. He had been admitted for a minor arm fracture and was set to be discharged the very next morning. But something happened that night. He never woke up. The family filed a lawsuit against the hospital, claiming something terrible must have happened. There was no logical explanation. Surveillance footage showed nothing unusual. No one entered his room. He was just waiting for morning. Even the nurse who told me the story seemed disturbed. And she said something that made my skin crawl. She hinted that maybe the rumors online were true. Of course, I asked what rumors. But just then, another nurse came over and called her away. When I returned to my brother's room, there was a little boy sitting by his side. I froze. Why would that scare me? Why would seeing an innocent child talking to my brother terrify me? Because earlier, that same nurse had shown me a photo of the boy who had died. And it was him, right in front of me, stroking my brother's hair. I turned to open the door and call the nurses, but it wouldn't budge. It was stuck. The boy looked at me and said not to bother, that only he could open the door. Then he walked away and said, "She's coming for your brother this week." He said he was sorry, that there was nothing I could do. He opened the door effortlessly. I followed him immediately, but he was gone. No one saw him. It was like he vanished into thin air. I ran back to my laptop and searched everything I could. Eventually, I found a forum about Kings County Hospital Center. People talked about a ghost nurse, someone who had died there while trying to give birth years ago. They said she never moved on and roams the hospital seeking comfort in children. The next morning, I begged the doctors to transfer my brother to another hospital. I even brought our parents in to back me up. But they refused. They said the treatment was finally showing signs of progress and that a transfer could compromise everything. They couldn't take that risk, not with his condition. That night, we were left alone on the pediatric floor. There was barely any staff around, and the silence was unsettling. The only sound was the steady beeping of the monitor tracking my brother's vitals. After a few hours, I felt a sudden and overwhelming urge to use the restroom. I rushed out and washed my hands, but while doing so, a strange sensation crept over me. The air grew colder, heavier. It felt like grief was dripping from the walls. Then I heard it, his monitor. It started beeping rapidly. I panicked and tried to rush out of the restroom, but the door wouldn't open. I pushed, pulled, nothing worked. Something was blocking it, and I couldn't get through. My heart was racing, and all I could think about was getting back to my brother. Then I heard it. That dreadful flatline tone. Right then, the door flew open like it had never been stuck at all. I ran as fast as I could. But when I got to his room, he wasn't breathing. I screamed for help. The nurses came running and tried everything, but it was no use. My little brother died that night. The official cause of death was cardiac arrest. But I know that's not the whole truth. The next day, the same nurse I had spoken to earlier pulled me aside. She whispered that my brother wasn't the first child to die like that, and he wouldn't be the last. She told me these deaths, sudden, unexplained, were more common than anyone dared admit. But staff were threatened into silence. I snapped. I started yelling throughout the hospital, insisting that something evil haunted that place and that more children would die if nothing was done. Security came and escorted me out. I was sure that once the word got out, reporters would swarm the hospital. But no one showed up. They silenced everything. Soon after, we started receiving calls for block numbers. People threatened us, told us to shut up or face consequences. We buried my brother in silence and grief. I still cry thinking about it. Not just because he's gone, but because I couldn't protect him. Because something unholy took him away, just like it did to the other child before him. My name is Gloria, and this happened in 2015 when I was hospitalized after a motorcycle accident. I had been riding with my best friend when it happened. Thankfully, the recovery was quick. After 2 weeks, I was already walking around and moving freely in my room. The doctor just wanted to run a few final tests to ensure everything was okay. He said sometimes trauma like this leaves behind neurological damage that might not show up right away. I made friends with some of the nurses. My friends came to visit about 3 or 4 times a week. I'll admit, some of them definitely came more for the nurses than for me. They were all stunning, no doubt about it. Luckily, the staff let them visit me even when they technically exceeded the limit. Still, no one was allowed to stay overnight. Not even in the waiting area. My parents didn't like that. They wanted to be with me the entire time, and I could see how much it bothered them to leave every night. I kept praying for the test to come back quickly so I could be discharged. Time in that place felt eternal. The days dragged, especially the nights. Then, one afternoon, I was told that my attending physician had been replaced. The new doctor was incredibly kind. He made me and my mom feel at ease immediately. He even gave us hope that maybe she could stay with me overnight soon. My mom teased me, saying he probably had a crush on me. But I didn't care. I already had someone else, someone from college who really had my heart. That night, the doctor told my mom she still couldn't stay, but promised it would be the last night I had to sleep alone. He said he'd spoken with the hospital director and had made the arrangements. Just one more night. Everything felt too perfect. So perfect that I didn't suspect anything. And that was the biggest mistake of my life. At midnight, the doctor entered my room looking tense. He told me my case had been approved for transfer to another facility, effective immediately. I was stunned. No warning, no explanation. I reached for my phone to call my mom, but he was faster. He slipped it into a plastic bag and said I'd get all my belongings once I arrived. Then he unlocked the wheels on my hospital bed and started pushing me down the hallway. What was strange was that I didn't see a single nurse or patient anywhere. Everything felt abandoned, and I started to feel heavy, like I was going to pass out. The only explanation I could think of was that something had been added to my floor. We went up an elevator, then into a side room at the far end of a dark corridor. The lights barely worked. He removed the floor, lifted me out of the bed, and laid me down on the cold floor. This wasn't a hospital room. It was too small, too hidden. The bed wouldn't have even fit. As I tried to sit up, he turned to me and said, "Bad luck found you tonight." Then he warned me, if I screamed, he'd be back to shut my eyes permanently. He left, locking the door behind him. And that's when I saw her. Another girl, huddled in the corner, knees pulled to her chest, shaking uncontrollably. At the back of the room was a body, a nurse, her uniform stained in blood. The smell had just started to take over. The girl whispered to me that he had killed her earlier that same day. When I asked who he was, she told me the truth. That man posing as a doctor was part of the human trafficking ring. They would replace certain patients, hide them in this room, and once enough time passed, they were reported missing. But by then, the girls were either far away or dead. The nurse who had found out was the one they murdered. I tried to stand, but my legs wouldn't move. I begged her to help open the door, but she was too terrified. 2 hours later, the doctor came back, this time with another nurse. She was the one who moved us at night. The look in her eyes, the way she talked, she didn't see us as people. We were just products. They locked the door again and left. Finally, the girl beside me stood and tried the door. No luck. I was regaining my strength and tried to help, but it was no use. Hours passed. It was now late afternoon. I began screaming. She started crying, then joined in. That's when salvation came. A young man broke in holding a metal pipe. He forced the lock open with about 10 hits. It was the other girl's brother. He had come to visit outside, visiting hours, and when he couldn't find her, started searching the hospital. We told him everything and called the police. They found the nurse's body in that hidden room and arrested the fake doctor. He never confessed, but it was clear he hadn't been working alone. They also arrested the nurse who helped him. Since then, I tell everyone, a ghost might scare you, sure. It might traumatize you. But the greatest danger you'll ever face is another human being. One who's completely aware of what they're doing. Because that kind of evil, that evil is real.